Sometimes the most devastating betrayals come not as dramatic explosions, but as slow burns that consume everything you thought you knew about the person you married. Today, I want to share with you a story that will hit you like a punch to the gut. A tale of deception, gaslighting, and the painful journey one man took to uncover the truth about his wife's affair. This is the story of David, a 39-year-old high school teacher, and his wife Sarah, a 40-year-old entrepreneur. What started as a missing person panic at 2:30 a.m. would eventually unravel a web of lies that destroyed a 13-year marriage and left two young children caught in the crossfire. Picture this. It's a Wednesday night, and David, exhausted from his day teaching high school students, says goodnight to his wife Sarah, who's on the sofa finishing up some work. Their two children, 6-year-old Emma and 4-year-old Jake, are already fast asleep. Sarah is an entrepreneur, and David knows she's been struggling with her business lately. An important deal had fallen through that day, and he could see the weight of it on her shoulders. David drifts off to sleep, expecting to wake up next to his wife of 13 years, but at 2:30 a.m., something jolts him awake. The bed beside him is empty. Sarah isn't there. Now, if you're married, you know that feeling, that immediate spike of concern when your partner isn't where they should be. David searches their apartment. Nothing. The kids are still sleeping soundly in their beds, but Sarah is nowhere to be found. Then he sees it, a text on his phone, timestamp 10:53 p.m. Gone for food, be back soon. David knows about the night markets in their area. Sarah loves the culture of late night food and drinks, and given how badly her work call went, he figures she's probably drowning her sorrows with some beers. It's later than usual, but he decides to give her space. After all, she's dealing with a lot of stress. But then 5:30 a.m. arrives, and she's still not home. David checks Find My iPhone, and his heart drops. Sarah's location shows she's at a police station. He calls her, no answer. His mind immediately jumps to the worst possible scenario: drunk driving. He's picturing tears, vomit, a 5-year driving ban. Maybe she feels like garbage and is too ashamed to call. As a dedicated teacher with a busy day ahead, David makes a difficult decision. He calls in sick to work, something he rarely does. He gets the kids out of bed, takes Emma and Jake to their different schools by taxi since Sarah took their car, and then heads to the police station. It's 8:30 a.m. now, and his imagination is running wild. Maybe there was a head-on crash. Maybe she's in the hospital. Maybe something worse happened. But when he arrives at the police station, he sees their car parked out front. The engine is running. There's a disheveled guy sleeping in the front seat, and David's fear turns to confusion and anger. He bangs on the window, demanding to know who this stranger is and what he's doing with David's wife. The guy, clearly caught off guard, stammers something about knowing Sarah from the tennis club and quickly disappears into the morning sun. And there, in the back seat, covered in vomit and absolutely hammered, is Sarah. David's relief that she's alive quickly turns to a mixture of anger, confusion, and deep concern. Sarah is apologetic, sorry for getting drunk, for making him miss work, for forgetting about the kids, but something doesn't add up. As David drives his wife home, his mind keeps circling back to one person: Marcus, Sarah's tennis coach. Marcus is a single 21-year-old guy, and David has noticed Sarah texting him frequently. Now, David isn't a controlling husband. He encourages Sarah's hobbies, especially given how much her business weighs on her. This year, she's been focusing on weight loss and sports, and tennis has become her main social outlet. But let's be honest, every husband has that nagging thought in the back of his mind about the stereotype of a sports coach getting too close to his wife. David has had his suspicions about Marcus, but he's tried to push them aside. Sarah assures him that nothing happened. She insists she doesn't see Marcus like that. He's more like a kid brother to her. And David genuinely believes that she believes this. Besides, she was unconscious and covered in vomit. Not exactly the picture of a romantic rendezvous. But David needs answers. How did she get so drunk? Sarah tells him she went to dinner at a restaurant by herself, a solo dinner. Marcus must have joined her since he lives nearby. It's a reasonable explanation, but something still feels off. When David goes to retrieve Sarah's phone from their vomit-covered car, curiosity gets the better of him. What he finds makes his blood run cold. There are screenshots of text messages between Sarah and Marcus, and more importantly, he can see that messages have been deleted from their conversation thread. The remaining messages show that Marcus invited her out for dinner. Confronted with this evidence, Sarah finally starts to come clean. She admits to hiding things and lying, but she frames it in a way that shifts the focus to David. She says the pressure of running her business makes her feel lonely and abandoned, and she can't talk to David about it. This, she insists, is the real issue they should focus on. Sarah explains that Marcus is a fun friend and a sympathetic ear she can unload on. She knows David is suspicious of him, which is why she hid their interactions and deleted messages. She also admits to secretly seeing Marcus one other time a week prior, a research trip to check out a new food and beverage installation in town. David can see what's happening here. Sarah likes the attention, but he's convinced that Marcus wants much more than friendship. Sarah agrees that her behavior is shady and needs to stop. She apologizes, but quickly pivots to her butt. She feels abandoned and unsupported by David when it comes to her business. She suggests a compromise. She'll never meet Marcus alone, and David is welcome to come to her tennis lessons. She's also spent $20 on advanced lesson payments with the tennis club and would be embarrassed to switch coaches. David mulls this over, but ultimately disagrees. He believes this is a nascent emotional affair and boundaries have already been crossed. He doesn't want to spend his marriage being suspicious, nervous, or policing his wife's interactions with another man. "I think this guy has to go," David tells her. "No lessons, no messaging, cut him out completely, and they can move on." Sarah is furious. She accuses David of being controlling and not allowing her to have her own friends. David suggests she reach out to her friends to get their perspective, confident that none of them would think it's reasonable to keep Marcus around. And it seems like his approach worked. Sarah showed some of the responses from friends and online communities, and they read, "Not Just Friends Together, a book about emotional affairs." Sarah acknowledged that she and Marcus were somewhere between stages 2 and 3 of an emotional affair. She deleted Marcus's contact information and changed coaches. For a while, things seemed to be going well. David encouraged Sarah to take trips that combined leisure and work to help her decompress. Their marriage and family life felt stable again. But this story is far from over. 4 days after the initial revelation, David was still struggling. He describes having that weird feeling in his chest, like having too much coffee, and being unable to sleep. The betrayal had shaken him to his core, but he was trying to work through it. Fast forward to a family vacation. Sarah, who admittedly isn't great with technology, asked David to update her WhatsApp. As he was helping her, he noticed TikTok was open in the background with unread messages. Curiosity got the better of him. What he found were messages from that very day between Sarah and Marcus. They seemed banal enough, just holiday pictures being shared, but David's gut told him something was wrong. That night, while Sarah snored beside him, David made a decision that would change everything. He went through her phone. He checked Marcus's social media. They weren't connected on David's accounts, and what he found made his heart sink. There was a picture of Marcus at an iconic lake, the same lake Sarah had visited on one of her recent trips. The rocks, plants, and electrical cables in Marcus's photo matched exactly with Sarah's own photos from her trip. She had taken the picture for him. She had been there with him. David's world came crashing down. Everything he thought he knew about his wife's recent behavior, everything she had promised him about cutting contact with Marcus, was a lie. The next morning, David wrote Sarah a letter. In it, he said he knew about her and Marcus. He would step aside so she could be with him. He asked for a 30-day separation to let everyone's heads cool off. Conveniently, Sarah had to leave the holiday for work travel anyway, so the timing worked out. Sarah's reaction was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd been caught. She stared at the letter silently for 3 minutes before finally saying, "It was just some text." David told her he knew more and that she needed to come clean. What followed over the next 24 hours was what David describes as trickle truth par excellence, the slow, painful process of extracting the real story piece by piece. Here's what actually happened, according to Sarah's eventual confession. She really did just have dinner with Marcus and get too drunk that night before Christmas. She did cut him out afterward, as promised. But in May, her new tennis coach was sick, and the tennis club boss paired her back up with Marcus. She didn't say no. They had a few dates, they kissed. When Sarah was bored on her trip to the lake, Marcus semi-invited himself along. They slept together that night. But it gets worse. Sarah actually paid for a plane ticket for Marcus to join her on another trip. This wasn't a case of him pursuing her relentlessly. She was actively facilitating their affair. Even in her confession, Sarah struggled to take full responsibility. She couldn't bring herself to say, "I invited him along to have sex with me." Instead, she framed it as being about her needs, claiming Marcus was just a kid who listened to her problems and was well put together. She insisted it was all on her, but her words suggested otherwise. David describes feeling an incredible wave of warm satisfaction when the truth finally came out. He wasn't crazy, he was right. Sarah had gaslit him for the better part of a year about Marcus. Sarah snapped at him during the revelation, saying, "You're right, you win," as if this was some kind of game. But David's moment of vindication was short-lived. The realization that he might have wasted 13 years of his life with this person, and that his children's lives were now irrevocably changed because of Sarah's selfishness, quickly put everything in perspective. Sarah is now desperate for reconciliation. She's making some of the right noises, but David has set clear conditions. Therapy for her and a hall pass for him are his minimum requirements to even begin that conversation. David acknowledges that they had a good marriage and family life otherwise. Sarah is a great mother to their 2 young children, who are happy and don't yet know what's going on. He doesn't see Sarah as a fantastic or evil person. She's just sort of normal, fallible and lovable, but deeply selfish and unable to take responsibility for her actions. The question that haunts David now is whether therapy can fix that fundamental character flaw. Can someone who has shown such a capacity for deception and self-deception really change? David's story offers several painful but important lessons for anyone in a relationship. First, trust your gut. Those nagging suspicions you try to dismiss, they're often rooted in subtle cues your conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet. David's initial concerns about Marcus weren't paranoia. They were his instincts picking up on real red flags. Second, if you suspect infidelity, don't reveal how much you know or how you found out if you want to get to the truth. David's approach of letting Sarah confess piece by piece revealed the full extent of her deception. If he had shown his cards too early, he might never have learned about the plane ticket or the full timeline of their affair. Third, gaslighting is real and devastating. For nearly a year, Sarah convinced David that his concerns about Marcus were unfounded, that he was being paranoid and controlling. This kind of psychological manipulation can make you question your own reality and judgment. Fourth, the trickle truth phenomenon is common in infidelity cases. Cheaters rarely come clean all at once. They reveal information gradually, often only when confronted with evidence, hoping to minimize the damage by controlling the narrative. What makes David's story particularly heartbreaking is how relatable it is. Sarah isn't portrayed as a monster. She's a stressed business owner, a good mother, someone dealing with real pressures and seeking connection. Her affair didn't happen because she's inherently evil, but because she made a series of selfish choices that prioritized her immediate emotional needs over her family's well-being. The tennis coach Marcus also isn't painted as a predator. He's a young man who found himself in a situation with an older, married woman who was actively pursuing him. While his choices were certainly questionable, Sarah was the one with the most to lose and the greatest responsibility to maintain boundaries. This story illustrates how affairs often develop gradually. It starts with innocent conversation, moves to emotional intimacy, progresses to secretive meetings, and eventually crosses into physical betrayal. Each step feels small in isolation, but together they create a web of deception that can destroy families. Throughout this entire ordeal, David's primary concern remains his children, 6-year-old Emma and 4-year-old Jake. They're too young to understand what's happening, but they're not too young to be affected by it. David now faces the impossible task of protecting them from the fallout while dealing with his own devastation. The ripple effects of Sarah's choices extend far beyond her marriage. Emma and Jake will grow up in a broken home, shuttling between parents, trying to understand why mommy and daddy can't live together anymore. They'll miss out on the stability and security that comes from an intact family unit. David's pain is compounded by the knowledge that his children's lives have been destroyed. His word by Sarah's selfishness. This isn't just about a marriage ending. It's about the fundamental disruption of a family unit that provided love, stability, and security for 2 young children. As David contemplates the possibility of reconciliation, he faces one of the most difficult questions anyone can confront. Can you forgive someone who has systematically lied to you for months? Can you rebuild trust with someone who has shown such a capacity for deception? Sarah's desperation for reconciliation is understandable. She's facing the loss of her marriage, her family unit, and her children's respect. But desperation alone isn't enough to rebuild a relationship. True reconciliation requires genuine remorse, complete honesty, and fundamental character change. David's conditions, therapy for Sarah and a hall pass for him, represent his attempt to level the playing field. The therapy addresses the underlying issues that led to Sarah's choices, while the hall pass acknowledges that the marriage's foundation of mutual fidelity has been shattered. But even with these conditions met, the question remains, can David ever truly trust Sarah again? Can he go on business trips without wondering who she's with? Can he see her with her phone without feeling the urge to check it? Can he believe her when she says she's going out with friends? David's story resonates because it touches on fundamental questions about modern relationships. In an age of social media, dating apps, and constant connectivity, the opportunities for emotional and physical affairs have multiplied exponentially. The boundaries between friendship and emotional intimacy have become increasingly blurred. The story also highlights the particular vulnerabilities of entrepreneurs and business owners. Sarah's isolation, stress, and need for emotional support created the perfect conditions for an affair to develop. Her business pressures, combined with what she perceived as David's lack of support, created a void that Marcus was able to fill. This doesn't excuse Sarah's choices, but it does illustrate how affairs often develop in the context of unmet emotional needs and life stressors. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for both preventing affairs and healing from them. As David faces an uncertain future, he's grappling with questions that have no easy answers. Is Sarah capable of the kind of fundamental change that would make reconciliation possible? Can therapy address the selfishness and lack of accountability that enabled her affair? Can David ever truly forgive and trust again? The separation David requested serves multiple purposes. It gives him time to process his emotions and decide what he wants. It forces Sarah to confront the consequences of her actions without the safety net of David's immediate forgiveness. And it creates space for both of them to work on themselves, whether together or apart. David's description of himself as a broken man is heartbreaking but honest. Betrayal by someone you love and trust completely is one of the most devastating experiences a person can endure. It shakes your faith, not just in your partner, but in your own judgment and ability to trust. David's story doesn't have a neat ending because life rarely provides them. As of his last update, he and Sarah are separated, the children don't know what's happening, and the future remains uncertain. Sarah is in therapy, working on the issues that led to her affair. David is trying to heal from the betrayal while figuring out what he wants for his future. What makes this story so compelling is its refusal to paint anyone as purely good or evil. Sarah is both a loving mother and a selfish wife. David is both a devoted husband and someone who admits to going through his wife's phone. Marcus is both a young man who should have known better and someone who was actively pursued by a married woman. The story serves as a powerful reminder that trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. It highlights the importance of communication, boundaries, and honesty in relationships. It shows how small compromises and seemingly innocent choices can snowball into life-altering betrayals. Most importantly, it reminds us that behind every affair are real people with real feelings, not just the unfaithful partner, but the betrayed spouse, the children, and even the third party. The pain ripples outward, affecting everyone in its path. David's journey from that panic-filled night in December to his current state of uncertainty is a testament to the complexity of human relationships and the devastating impact of betrayal. His story serves as both a cautionary tale and a source of hope. Cautionary because it shows how easily trust can be shattered, and hopeful because it demonstrates the human capacity to survive even the most devastating betrayals. Whether David and Sarah ultimately reconcile or go their separate ways, their story reminds us that love, trust, and forgiveness are not just feelings but choices we make every day. And sometimes, the most loving choice is also the most difficult one. Thank you for listening to this difficult but important story. If you or someone you know is dealing with infidelity, remember that you're not alone, and help is available. Please take care of yourselves and each other.